I'm an alcoholic. My name is Greg, and I have experience with this stuff as it's laid out in the big book. I've been a member of Thursday night uh, on the Cape for since like 1981. Um, so I basically grew up in Big Book. You know, uh, I was willing. I had the spiritual approach laid at my feet, and I just started trying to live a day at a time, and now I'm a full-fledged big book cement head. But it's good. Life could be a lot worse, believe me. Um, I think the reading discusses your approach to the new man, but I think most of us that have at least done this work, we know that you we as an alcoholic who was armed with facts about myself, I have a much better chance of success with the suffering alcoholic than say someone that has no experience or no understanding of what's going on in the alcoholic's mind. They're just coming across like they're just another mental health case. So I think it's important to just take a minute and explain what got me here, because this is the person that works with the new man. And had I not learned about acceptance and a peaceful, relaxed, calm environment that I'm responsible for, had I not seen any of that stuff, then I wouldn't have any luck. I take everything personal, and it'd be me against them, or them, or I'd codependent. I'm doing their thinking for them, and then I'm setting myself up. How come they're not doing what I think is best for them, and don't they know who I am, and all that kind of selfishness and fear. And once I'm in that, I have a hard time getting out, because what gets me in there is spiritual weakness. It's worshiping people instead of a power greater than myself. So my only way to get out of that is worshiping different people. Once you're stuck in that trap where other people's opinions are really all you have. If they like you, you can like you, or if they accept you, then you accept you. That kind of thing. You rely on people, and if that's all I have, then my my peace, my understanding, my psychic change, my daily recovery, that's short lived. You know what I mean? Because I revolve my life around people, and then I set myself up, something goes wrong, and then they leave, but they take me with them. So, now I'm back by myself alone again. I'm lacking any type of spiritual development or understanding of a spiritual realm or anything like that. God of my understanding, my own conception of a spiritual power greater than myself, whatever it is. If I don't have that, then I personally, I don't think any of this stuff would work for me. I've met people that are atheists, and they say no. They have their own views on things, and it almost seems like a lot of people are hung up on the deity thing. The whole Jesus, God, Bible, Christianity. That's religion and everything like that. I've never really been hung up on that, so it doesn't really affect me. Um, but anyway, so I started with the on my trek to working with the new man. I started um, seeing myself as a bad manager, basically. My management skills were terrible. I had no coping skills. I just bounced around from people, places, and things to more people, places, and things, trying to make me happy and or at least get some relief. And none of that stuff worked. I mean, it worked for a little while, and I'd go to extremes too. It's not like I would just be a people using enthusiast. I'd go all in. And take total possession of people, and or hostages or whatever, however you want to look at it. And people, they're not they're not designed for that. They don't. Some people are, but most people, especially somebody like myself, I see what other people do and I see how other people live. So I think if I do what they do, I'll get what they get. And if I see them happy and they've got a golden retriever dog with a red bandana and a Volvo station wagon and they've got a house they live in and the guy mows the lawn and everything looks great and they're young, and they're sober. So I start to assume that if I get that stuff, that's the pinnacle of my sobriety. That's what I need. So I can't get any of that. So I find somebody to get it for me. Maybe the new girl from Wednesday night, or Thursday night, or the one that shows up at the meeting and you're sure she couldn't possibly be an alcoholic. She's too pretty and smart. But the thing that I had to realize that got me willing to believe that I couldn't, make the mission myself was that it didn't matter who these people were. I was always showing up at the situation, and if I had different clothes or a different attitude or a different car or different hobbies or whatever, different interests, that didn't matter because I couldn't change. I just didn't have the ability to change. So anyway, so I was willing and premature, just willing. And I made that third step decision. And then I started writing a fourth step, which I couldn't do. I just couldn't. I just didn't have the capacity for it. I couldn't pick up the pen. When I first came around to AA, they would talk about how call your sponsor or something, and that phone, the 50-pound phone, and all that kind of talk. Well, it was the same thing with the fourth step. I couldn't pick up that pen. I couldn't write. I was unwilling. I was incapable of looking at myself. And such a survivor. So anyway, I started asking for help to pick up the pen. I would say, God, please take this pen, put it on the paper, help me to write down and face and be rid of the things that are blocking me, and the next thing you know, I wrote a fourth step. Okay, so that's my experience. That's what I know about writing a fourth step. And then a fifth step, it was time to get honest and I needed to let my God know, my higher power, my creative intelligence underlying the totality of all things, the God of my understanding. I needed to let this God know that I knew, that I'd seen myself, and that's really what that was about. And with that attitude, I could be humble with other people. I could surrender to my God and, not be ashamed or anything. I didn't care now. I was like, I'd talk about God all the time, whereas a few months before that, I couldn't even say the word. It was higher power was as close as I was going to get. So anyway, I did then I got 6 and 7. And so now I had experience, admitting my egoism and fear, to my God and another person. And when I got to step 6 and 7, it's talked about the prayer said, your creator. And that kind of stumped me because I wasn't religious. I believed in God. Like I noticed, I think it's on the next page when you do your third step, the prayer in the book. The next page says the wording was optional as long as we express the idea, voicing it without reservation, which I said the prayer, word for word out of the book. But I did have a feeling that maybe there was something else, or there was a little more to it, or maybe a little less to it, or maybe I wasn't a Christian at all. I don't know. I wasn't sure. I was pretty ignorant to the whole thing. I wasn't big on church, occasional Sunday school, and anything that had any power over me, I rejected. So, any religious person might as well have been a school teacher or a cop or my father or whatever, something that aroused a resentment toward authority, But anyways, so I wasn't religious, and I came to this line that said, my creator, and I thought, what about other people must go through this? I can't be the only one. I figured that out, at least. And on inspection, right, I inspected this a little bit, and I saw that, well, I was basically nothing, living in an abandoned building, really. I had gone from, one of my, living good, everything's going good, to seemed like overnight, everything's gone, whatever. It's that cycle. I was in the low point of that cycle. And I'd gone from that to a host of friends in AA, fellowship, buddies, and, a lot of good discussion at the butt can, and going on commitments and everything, open speaker stuff, coffee maker job. I was active, and I was participating, and I was growing. Now, it might be limited understanding and effectiveness to someone who is, gone through the steps and has that kind of experience. But to me, it was huge. I mean, I'd been sober for months, So anyway, what happened was I saw that my creator was basically the higher power that I'd been asking for help. It was the one that I surrendered to in step 3. It was the one that, allowed me to pick up the pen to put it on the paper in step 4. This was my creator. This was something that was making me something that, left on my own, I just was incapable of dealing with life on life's terms. And in the 5th step and surrendering all that stuff and those deep dark secrets and everything, there was some power, some creative intelligence that I felt I was tapping into. So what I'm getting at is, this is the person that is sitting at the AA meeting, and there's the new man there, whatever. He's shaky, he's got his own rough patch going. So do I understand what it's like to? Can I even put myself in his shoes? And I find that I mean, I've screwed up. Don't get me wrong. I'm not like the master sponsor or anything, but I've found myself able to, with my 11th step, for instance, stay calm, relax, take it easy, get a clear head, surrender myself in the morning, and I'll incorporate, that's whoever this new guy, Bob, Joe, whoever it is, I'll incorporate them into my daily prayers, or my meditation, or whatever. It doesn't have to be, I don't have to set up a shrine and go, make a plan at, looking in his windows, but I can, I imagine I'm going to bump into him. We go to the same meeting. I got his phone number. He's got my phone number. If he doesn't call me, I'll give him a call. See what's going on. This isn't Gregg's Anonymous, where I'm holier than thou, and can't come to terms with the man who's suffering and needs help. So, my attitude of tolerance is there. I can handle it. So if I go and I see this guy and he's like, nah, I don't want to have anything to do with it, I'm not like, what? What do you mean? Tuesday you said you liked it, like as if he's lying to me. You know what I mean? As if I'm God and he's letting me down. But I need to see that we're on equal ground, basically, and I try to do that. I pray to do that. That's how I end up doing that. And how can I be of service to this man, this new man, And I've been approached by other family members, the wife or girlfriend or something, and I tread really lightly there, because there's other people out there and there's other help for these people also. There's Al-Anon and, stuff like, sometimes there's other AA meetings, there's other things, there's counseling, there's lots of things that can be done without me jumping in there with some great words of wisdom. So, I can look at the other side of the coin. I can see that there's other people that may or may not be just as important as my involvement. And I'm not afraid to bring them into the picture, and I think that attitude of, basic humility is God given for me anyway. I don't generate that stuff myself. But when I utilize it, I can come and go as I please. It's like I've made amends, and to myself and to the people that I've harmed in my life. And, quite a few of them. That was a big list. But what that did is that, sure, you think that, well, maybe I'm ready finally for that hell of a guy award. Hey, Ma, look at me. Look what I've, your son's 27 and, he's a big success now. He's a big mucky muck in AA, you know what I mean? And, but really, all it is, all that amends and stuff like that is being honest with myself so I can walk freely as a free man. I can walk all the way through Hyannis, for instance, and not be afraid of who I'm going to meet coming the other way, some unresolved issue, some attitude of intolerance that's going to, prop up and get me all full of fear. And, in other words, I'm free to come and go as I please. So that allows me to see the new man on the new man's terms. I don't have to go through the day creating and arranging environments where I feel I'm going to be secure. I have to worry about not picking up a drink, but I surrender for that. I have to worry about not being agitated and doubtful, but I surrender for that. There's medicine that I take for myself, my spiritual medicine. So bringing that to the table with the new man, I think is important. Not that, hey, you got a new guy, he needs a ride to a meeting, and you grab him, you get him to the meeting, and you give him a few bucks so he has something to eat, or you take him out for coffee, or you do anything like that, pay his room rent, do whatever. I've done all that stuff, most of it, and I know other people that have too. It's just kind of goes with the territory. But, you have to be careful not to, this might be in the second part, but you have to be careful not to involve other people. Like if I was married, for instance, or I have a girlfriend that I live with, I don't just show up with the new guy and, hey, you can use the spare room, without checking in and without getting an opinion from the other person. The other person might, a female, they might look at a guy and I haven't heard any fifth steps or anything from this guy. I don't really know who I'm dealing with. I just know he's in trouble. And I know that, a lot of times the female can look at the guy and go, yeah, we don't need him to stay with us. Let's help him find a place to stay besides here. And you have to take them for their word because they're part of you. This is my dynamic. This isn't just my own mental house being in order. It's my physical house too, so, and I'm not the only one living here. So it's a shared interest and, you have to be humble to respect that. I don't think it just comes because it's there, I mean, I can be selfish and defensive just like anybody else. I just choose not to most of the time. When I see it, it crops up, I immediately ask for help to have it removed and ask my God to direct my attention to what he would have me be. So I'm pretty good at step 10. I'm pretty good at step 11. This brings me up to the step 12. I got the new guy. He's on the hook. I don't know, how he's going to react or what's going on in his life. I've had guys and, the next thing you know, he's a level 4 sex offender and he's pounding his fist on your dashboard of your truck because, something you said or something, I have to be careful. So I pray that I don't do anything or say anything that's going to hurt this man, whatever he is. Maybe he's just a common drunk. Most of the time there's divorce, tough relations, financial difficulties, a history that's about to mow him down like a snowplow. So, you have to be prepared for that. And am I prepared for that? I think that with my experience, what I've been talking about, 1 through whatever it is, 10 or 11, that I've got a pretty good idea about myself. So I'm secure enough to go into his world a little bit, and come back out. I don't go in there and get trapped. I'm not going to go in there and all of a sudden solve his problems or think I can, because I know enough to know that I don't have that kind of power. He needs to be willing to accept spiritual help if he wants what I have. And he needs to be willing to take action if he wants what I have. But if he doesn't want what I have, there's plenty of other guys. And I've, been pretty generous about that. I'm happy. If I can't help the guy, but I can find somebody that can, that's just as good. You know what I mean? It's almost like you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. Anyway, I don't mean to go on forever. There was one other thing I was just thinking about, but I think it's probably gone. But I have a lot of experience with this. I've had guys, go through the 12 steps and then go through a car windshield. You don't know what's going to happen. And You can never really predict who's going to stay sober and who isn't going to stay sober. And that's why it's important to support the one day at a time concept. Because like this guy, Pat Roach, old Pat Roach, he was sober for years and years from Boston. He used to say, tomorrow's a mystery, yesterday's history. It's just today. It's all we got. And if I pay attention to that big book, the directions in step 11 in that book are showing me how to live, spiritually awakened for 24 hours. So that's what I need to pass on. And if he follows my directions and I'm following the directions of my sponsor and AA as a whole, then chances are I'm going to see this guy 6 months down the road or a year later, depending on how long, it takes him to get any distance. And there'll be another guy that he's picking up and he's trying to figure it out. And he's asking for help in the morning, and he's asked God to take the pen to put it on the paper, and he's seen his creator, maybe Jesus Christ. I don't know. I've also had guys who were religious but were stumped. They were stuck in the mud. And even though I'm not religious, the book does say, be quick to see where religious people are right. It doesn't say that they're right. It just says where they're right. And I think each one of these people, whether it's a religion or self-assured or whatever it is, you have a willingness to believe, that there is something out there or in here or around you or whatever it is, but there is something, and it's more powerful than your, consistently failing decisions. And so, you can be a Catholic, you can be a Protestant, you can be a Buddhist, you can worship earth and sky. You can see a shaman, you can do basically nothing if you like. That's totally up to you. But the bottom line is you're willing to care enough about yourself to care for yourself. And however you do that, that's going to be up to you. And a lot of times I see guys and I'm like, how the hell are they doing that? It's not for me to decide that. Those aren't my decisions. It's not Gregg's Anonymous. So, you get a little wisdom or you get some experience, and this is what you pass on to that new guy. This puts you in a position so you're not harming him, so your discussions with him aren't selfish or, dripping with self-centeredness. And you've, like it says, perhaps made a friend. Yeah, why not? You can have friends now. I didn't have any friends. I knew people, but you go through this work and, you feel good enough about yourself to actually have a friend. You can care about other people. And anyway, I probably went on way too long, but that's a first part of step 12 as close as I can get. Thank you.